Today we're in the beautiful East Yorkshire town of Beverley, home of Val Wood, best-selling author of historical sagas. Let's go meet her. Good, so Val, thank you for coming on Billboard. It's very nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
When did you first start writing?
I've always had a very fertile imagination, even as a child. I was always making up stories in my head. And it just progressed from there, really. My first inspiration from a writer, I think, was probably Little Women and Louisa M. Alcott, who wrote that, because she was writing about strong women in a difficult situation, but in America. And I used to read that over and over again. I think she was my first inspiration. But I began writing for my children, just little short stories about the cat or the dog or the garden, things like that. Oddly enough, they can't remember any of that, so they were only very young. But I think I was trying out my stories on them. And I continued with that. I even actually joined a children's, how to write children's stories. And they didn't really like what I was doing, so I stopped contributing to them, and I still went on writing the ones that I liked. Which was really, it was about fairies and pixies and goblins and things like that, which they said wasn't popular then, which is odd, isn't it, today, when you think about it, how popular they are now.
Yeah.
And I continued always. I suppose there was a big break when I was a teenager, but when I was writing for my children and onwards, I don't think I ever stopped writing then. I was always scribbling something.
You plucked up the courage to write your
Well,
first novel.
what I did, I joined a writer's workshop, and that in itself was inspirational. And I travelled around after the tutor for something like 10 years, so I've had a very long apprenticeship. And I then began a novel. You know, I used to drive between my home in Holderness out to Hornsey, where my mother lived. And as I was travelling along the coast road, I would see how much erosion had gone over. And there was one particular day when it was a beautiful day, the sky was blue, the sea was blue, which it isn't very often, the North Sea, or the German Ocean, as I began then to discover it had been called. And I realised that a lot more erosion had gone over. And I thought, I wonder what older villagers, 19th century villagers, thought about that. What did they do to save their village? Because Mappleton village was in danger of going over the edge. And that began a story in my head, a short story, I thought. And so by the time I got to Hornsey to see my mother and then home again, I had this plot.
And that became The Hungry Tide.
And that became The Hungry Tide, because I wrote 5,000 words or so and realised I'd done it wrong. I'd started off with them out on the edge when I should have started elsewhere and built up to that. So I scrapped that, began again, started my story in Hull, and then took them out to Holderness. It took me about 2.5 years maybe to write that novel, it became, and that became The Hungry Tide.
And that was time well invested, because of course your debut novel won the Catherine Cookson Prize.
It did win, that's right, and that was another most amazing thing, that it was actually my first novel ever. You know, not an attempt at a novel, but a first novel ever. And well, from then on, of course, I've never stopped.
And that was so that kick-started your professional career as a writer.
It kick-started my professional career. I won the prize through Transworld Publishers, and I'm still with them today, 25 years later. So yeah, that was the most wonderful beginning for me.
And also, I mean, although you've got to have imagination as a writer, it's also a skill as well, isn't it? It's a skill that you need to learn and develop.
It is. It's like any creative craft. You know, you can't knit a jumper unless you know how to cast on. It's something I never did learn. But it's the same kind of thing, that you do need to learn your craft. You need how to learn. You have to read, to write grammatically. You have to say what you mean without meandering all over the place, which is what we all do. And you have to be able to cut it when you don't want to, cut out the best bits because they're really not suitable or appropriate. So there are all kinds of things to learn about writing.
I mean, another hallmark year in your life, it was 2017.
Last
wasn't it?
year,
So much
yes.
happened.
Yes.
How did it feel getting your doctorate from
Well, that was
university?
another most amazing occasion. Incredible, because I hadn't had a very good education as a child. I had gone on later as a mature student to take my O and A levels. But to actually get an honorary doctor of the university, and because of my dedication to literature, and particularly, of course, to the city of Hull, because 2017 was about the city of Hull. But it was incredible and wonderful, and gosh, yes, words fail me.
And of course you gave a lecture at the university as well last year.
As part of the City of Culture year, yes, we were asked, well, anyone could have done it, we were asked to write about an inspirational woman. And so I chose Marie Curie, mainly because not the charity, the woman. I chose her because I had used her in last year's book. Was it last year, the year before? Last year's book, which was No Place for a Woman. And I used her, my character Lucy, as a child, and then she became adult and wanted to be a doctor. And as she became older and old enough, she then went out to the front in the First World War. And of course that's where Marie Curie was too, because she had developed a mobile X-ray machine.
And that novel was a sort of transition novel between your sort of 19th century settings.
Yes, yes it was.
And it moving into the 20th century.
Yes, I hadn't written about that period before. I'd previously written all about the 19th century, which was it's a very comfortable place for me to be. I have a lot of books on the 19th century. I remember my granny talking about her parents who lived at that period in the 19th century. So that was very connectable, I suppose we would say. But writing about the 20th century, I had to do so much more research because I hadn't written about early 20th century before. And, you know, we had things like electricity came, the telephones came, motor cars came at the beginning of the 20th century. So it was a whole exciting new experience for me too.
That's great. But although you've generally your protagonists are strong women, as you say, you did have a male protagonist recently, didn't you, in Stephen's War?
In the short story?
Yeah.
Yes, not a novel.
Now, did you not think a male protagonist was worth a novel?
Oh, I have had male. I have had Every Mother's Son.
Okay.
That
yes,
was a male character,
okay.
and I loved him. And of course, in this book, Mother's Choice, I have a little boy.
Okay.
And I absolutely adore him. I don't know where he came from, because I haven't a son, I have two daughters, I have a grandson, so maybe I get inspired from him.
So, A Mother's Choice, this is your latest book?
It is, yes.
And that's due out...
It's out now in hardback,
yeah.
and it's out in paperback on the 8th of February.
That's great. So Val, thanks for joining us today. It's been lovely to meet you. Good luck with your novel
Thank
that's
you,
out now,
thank you.
and we'll look forward to seeing your new novel when it's out later this year. Or
Probably November, I would think.
November.
That's generally the time, yes.
Thank you very
November again is a very busy time of the year.
much. Thank you.